Welcome and aloha. I am Mark Shklov, the host of ThinkTech Hawaii's Law Across the Sea program. The last lines of Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, are as follows. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Today we're talking with Hawaii attorney Greg Kim about taking the road less traveled and making a difference as a lawyer. Greg, you have been a practicing attorney for over 30 years. You've worked in some very prestigious law firms, and you were a partner in one of the largest law firms in Hawaii. You were on the traditional career path of a successful legal professional. However, in 2004, two roads diverged, and you took the one less traveled. You opened up a virtual law firm. Nowadays, during the COVID-19 pandemic, when everyone is working virtually, that seems like a prophetic decision. But back then, 16 years ago, I doubt if most lawyers even understood what you were doing or talking about. What were you doing? What was a virtual law firm when you set it up?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on this show. That's one of my favorite topics, actually. So I would say that it wasn't just a road less traveled. There was no road. You know, I had to bring my machete out and kind of make the pathway. That was 16 years ago. I'm glad to see more people working this way now, and they're seeing the advantages. But it was sort of a convergence of things. When I went through school, I did everything right. You know, I went to college, I went to grad school, got a good job, married a great woman, had great kids. But when I made partner at a big law firm, you know, I started thinking, is that it? You know, so now I stay in this position till I die, and that's pretty much what life's about. So I started questioning, you know, my pathway. And so combine that with working with a lot of startups, the entrepreneurial bug kind of hit me. And I didn't realize till then that I had an entrepreneurial spirit to me. And it was sort of, you know, suppressed during my schooling, because you're not really, when I was in school, the entrepreneurship wasn't really anything it wasn't a career path. So, so when I went through this entrepreneurial phase, I started thinking about, gee, you know, the legal profession could use some improvements, you know. That's one kind of thought that occurred to me. A second thought that occurred to me is lawyers have to work so darn hard to make a living. And, you know, in Hawaii, we like to have quality of life. So I'm thinking, how can I manage to do that? Third thing that occurred to me is law firms have such a high overhead. You know, the overhead is 2/3 or more of revenue at most traditional law firms. So you're working till September to pay your overhead. And then finally, the thing that was happening was technology was making it easier to work outside the office. And this was in 2004. So, you know, basically for us business lawyers, because I'm a corporate lawyer like you, Mark, I do transactional, we don't need a lot of stuff. And so I was thinking, well, we need a phone and we need a computer. And that's all we need to actually get our business done, because we don't really need a lot of paper. We don't file documents. And so my thought was, eventually the market's going to correct for that, because clients don't want to pay for things that are not necessary. It's just taken a long time, because I think legal profession moves very slowly. So in 2004, I embarked on a virtual law firm, started the first one called Vantage Counsel, which I'm practicing within now. I've been at 2 other virtual firms since then, based in Silicon Valley. And so Vantage Counsel was the first one in 2004. And the idea was, we did have a small downtown office, but very small compared to, we had, I think, 8 attorneys for, you know, probably 1,000 square foot office. So the cost was really low. And the thing is, when your costs are low, you can either make more money or you can have more free time. And either one is a good thing. As it turned out, you know, we were pretty busy. So my second year, I think I doubled my income from what I was making at my old law firm, but I wasn't trying to do that. It just naturally follows from the fact that your overhead is 10 or 20% of your revenue. And so if you do the math, it's very easy to see you can have a much better life. And so the idea was to improve the legal profession, really, because I had friends that had formed their own law firms and they could make a lot more money, even in the traditional scenario. But I didn't want to just make money. I wanted to try to improve the way we practice. And also, without having to bill every single hour that I'm working, you can actually invest time in situations. So that creates opportunity for lawyers to become a participant in a potential joint venture. They don't have to pay you, to bring you to the table. You can actually invest your own time becoming a participant in the situation. And then if the deal happens, then of course you get a great client and a great project. So I think it opens the doors. And interestingly, not for Hawaii probably, but most people would take free time over money. If they can make the same amount of money working half time, which is what the system allows, then they would be able to have a much better life. I think the idea is that we have an eat what you kill system, which is you collect what you get paid what you collect. But if you took a traditional law firm model and you just took away all the overhead down to say 10%, any downtown law firm, it would be unstoppable because they'd have the most profitable firm, they'd have the happiest people, and a lot of people don't have to work as hard as they used to. And so you can recruit the top lawyers into that system. And I think now that's going to happen sooner rather than later with this situation, because a lot of my colleagues and friends in the law business say, hey, I kind of like working at home, so I think we're going to see even after COVID-19 passes by, businesses, including law firms, wanting to work virtually. And that's awesome, so.
Well, you were kind of ahead of the game, but you obviously you didn't know about COVID-19. I don't think, but in those days, and you wanted to do something a little different with your life and law. It sounds like is what you're saying, and you saw some things that sparked your interest: computers, ability to work on or through a computer instead of having to be in the office, the traditional coat and tie and meet in the office way. Now, you is that correct? Am I thinking correctly? Is that where you were coming from?
Well, the coat and tie didn't bother me because, in Hawaii, you just wear law shirts because I don't go to, but when I moved back to Hawaii from San Francisco, that was one of my reasons is I didn't want to put on a tie every day, oddly enough. And that might be a Hawaii kind of mentality, but, I want to be comfortable. And so I think it wasn't so much I want to do something different as I want things to be better. And a lot of the law is pretty traditional. And so a lot of what we do in the virtual firm makes business sense. It's just that law firms don't necessarily act like typical business, creatures. They're bound with tradition, having the corner office, having a lot of people around. And a lot of people get used to that and they don't want to give it up. But, eventually they're going to have to because the market won't bear it, and I think we're seeing that happen right now and working this way.
Well, that was 16 years ago. And I would think in those days, virtual law firm was, what are you talking about? What did your lawyer friends, your colleagues, your clients, your family, what did they think about your idea in those days? That was really a new idea.
Yeah, it was pretty revolutionary at the time. I think we were one of the first 5 firms in the country to be virtual, and we were featured in the ABA Journal and other national press because of that. What did people think? Well, it was across the board. I think that my startup clients loved it. They saw the advantages, and a lot of startups are trying to make the world better by coming up with new business models, and then the old business models die out because they won't survive, right? My family, I have to give a lot of credit to because I had shared this idea with them, and I had kids in 8th grade and 5th grade and coming up the ranks. And so college was just around the corner, but they told me, go do it, Dad. That's a good idea. You should get that done. So I have to credit them with giving me the confidence, because I didn't want to bring my family down. If you think about it though, for lawyers, we don't have a whole lot of downside because, if I'm skillful at what I do in some way, even if I crashed and burned, I can get a job. So, my risk wasn't really that low. As far as lawyers are concerned, I think the reaction I got from colleagues was, and this is what I've heard maybe secondhand from other people, because they wouldn't necessarily tell me directly, but, he's just working at home. It's not a real law business, right? And I had a picture of myself on the beach because Hawaii Business did an article when I launched, because they thought it was a very interesting idea. So I said, my dream would be to work on the beach. So I think you saw the picture on my website. They made a little table of sand. I put my laptop there and sat there. We didn't have Wi-Fi back then. I mean, we didn't have hotspot technology. And so that wasn't possible. It was just a dream. And now, of course, you can work anywhere, right? So my colleagues were questioning it. And that's to be understood. I mean, they're not buying into this model at that point. But after a couple of years and I'm still in business and doing well, they're like, oh, you're still around? I'm like, I wasn't planning on going anywhere. And then after 3 years, they weren't even questioning it anymore. I think it was more, oh, I guess he's going to be around. And so, I didn't realize just surviving was such a factor in how people viewed your business, but I guess it is. I had every intent to survive, and it is scary to go off on your own because who knows if any clients are going to come with you, right? You can't solicit them before you leave. So, but I think over time, people thought it was great. I think certainly in Silicon Valley, this sort of thing was not uncommon, even in the law profession. Firms there are pretty advanced in their thinking. But in Hawaii, it's a pretty conservative market. And so I think it didn't move along as fast as I wanted it to. People, I think, want to wait and see if it's going to work. Fast forward to today, necessity is the mother of invention. And so whether it's law firms or restaurants or other businesses, they've had to be innovative because they had to. And that's what pushes innovation oftentimes, is the need for it, the urgency. And so I think everyone's sort of catching up to the idea, and I'm really pleased to see that, actually.
Well, I like the photo of you on the beach. I mean, nowadays, we think, of course, anybody, you can work anywhere. But in those days, that wasn't right. And I mean, this whole thing, it's like you saw into the future and you decided to go forward on this road that had never been taken before. There is a risk, and I understand you could have probably got a job somewhere else if it didn't work out, but still it is something. Nowadays we think, oh yeah, it's normal, maybe, and then it was truly remarkable and really interesting, and I doubt if most lawyers really understood the concept. Now, you've had the 16 years, the virtual law firm. How has it affected you personally and professionally? How do you feel about it from both angles?
I absolutely love it. I wouldn't say there's no downsides. I think the challenges in socializing with people and the water cooler discussions that you could have in a bricks and mortar firm is something that still needs to be improved upon. And I think that, there are ways around that, but, there's no perfect solution. But I love it because, number one, I've gotten my life back. I was able to, for example, be the parent that could go on my kids' excursions with class with for my kids, because my wife had a traditional, job at a desk as an administrator, but I had this flexibility. So it gave me my life back. And also it gave me flexibility to help people. And I really got hooked on that, especially when I was hanging around entrepreneurs, that law could be a thing that you use to help people. It's not just a way to make a living. Whatever.
And I'm going to interrupt you right now. We're going to take a short break, and I want to ask you specifically about what that means when we come back.
Okay. Hi, I'm Rusty Komori, host of Beyond the Lines on ThinkTech Hawaii. I was the head coach for the Punahou boys varsity tennis team for 22 years, and we were fortunate to win 22 consecutive state championships. My show is based on my book, also titled Beyond the Lines, and it's about leadership, creating a superior culture of excellence, and finding greatness. I feature a wide range of amazing guests who share valuable insights about how going beyond the lines leads to success in everything you do in life. I'm looking forward to you joining me every Monday at 11 a.m. Aloha.
Aloha, we are back. I am Mark Shklov, host of ThinkTech Hawaii's Law Across the Sea program, and we are with Greg Kim, and we've been talking about the roads less traveled that Greg has taken. The first one 16 years ago, virtual law firm. Greg, I know you've taken some other roads less traveled. After the COVID-19 pandemic hit Hawaii, you formed a nonprofit called Help Is On the Way, right? What is Help Is On the Way? How did it come into existence? What inspired you to create it?
Thank you, Mark. Well, in mid-March, as you know, we were all sitting around the house watching this thing happening, and people were posting on social media quite a bit about complaining about this, that, and the other thing. And one of the things that would come up a lot is kapuna, were being left behind. They couldn't go shopping, or if they were shopping, there was nothing on the shelves for them. And you saw all these pictures being posted of kupuna at stores with no food and no help, and they're hunched over and they shouldn't even be out, right? So I was interacting with a friend of mine on Facebook, and he was one of these people that was pointing this out. And I said, well, why don't you do something about it? And crickets, nothing happened. I mean, and I think as an entrepreneurial person, being exposed to what entrepreneurs do, when you see a problem, you have a bias to action. And so I immediately started thinking, well, we're going to do something about it. And we have all these people sitting at home with nothing to do, not permitted to go out. And we have kupuna who can't get out because they're going to get sick, and a lot of them might die. And so a lot of my entrepreneurial ideas are really connecting a resource to a need. So I saw a vast pool of people who were at home but wanting to do something, and then a vast pool of kupuna and other vulnerable people at home, stuck at home, couldn't get food. So, and then I saw a program on NBC on these two kids in New York that started a grocery delivery service, similar idea. And they said it blew up to 2,500 volunteers, pretty much overnight. So I'm like, whoa, that was a validation of the idea to some extent. And so on March 22nd, I formed a Facebook group called Help Is On the Way. And immediately that day, the City and County of Honolulu called me, the Elder Division, and said, hey, we saw what you're doing. We really need that piece of the puzzle. We don't have a delivery service to get food to kupuna. So I'm like, okay. I said, we just formed, but he didn't seem to be dissuaded by that. So I think having a few gray hairs helps maybe, because I've been around, so I'm not an unknown quantity. So anyway, we joined the Kupuna Elder Care Coalition, which had a lot of players in it: Food Bank, City and County, Meals on Wheels, et cetera, Salvation Army. So that was awesome to be part of that group, gave us credibility. I had a small group of friends that I knew could be helpful and had kind hearts. And so there's 6 of us that are co-founders, and then incorporated on March 23rd, which I think was a Sunday. And then March 24th, we were up and running. And so we've gone through obviously a lot of ups and downs through that period, but one thing has remained the same, which is what we do. We get things from point A to point B. And as a startup of any kind, you need to be focused on what you can do well. And that's the one thing that we do. And so we immediately started taking calls for delivery. And within the first couple of weeks, we had about 200 volunteers apply. And then we had to figure out how to onboard them. Entrepreneurship's an iterative process. So one thing we realized is that we're not going to just put them out on the road. We don't know these people. We need to be safe. And so we had to interview them, reference check, training. And so obviously that takes time. And so, but fast forward to today, we have 150 volunteer drivers that are ready to go. And so we've made a lot of deliveries that way. But I think that was a really great focus of ours, is to maintain the quality of our volunteers. And so it's amazing how kind-hearted people are. I think that people having time on their hands was also a factor, right? Because as essential workers, we could go out notwithstanding the stay-at-home orders, because we were essential work, and we had a letter from the city that we carried around with us in case we got stopped. And so, it gave people an excuse to go out, right? Which is a good thing. You always want to make it a win-win, but it really has given me a lot of faith in humanity to see all the kind people. And we tell the volunteers when they sign up is, look, if you want to stay healthy, don't do this. You know, you can be healthier, safer, just staying home or not being out on delivery, because we'll deliver some things to people that either have the virus or are quarantined. I've delivered urine samples, so I've had to go into a diagnostic clinic for a lady. And so it's not the safest thing to do, you know? And so all of our volunteers—
You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it, right? They're volunteers.
We don't have to do it. They don't get paid. In fact, we don't need money. We don't raise money because we don't want money. We don't need money because everyone pays their own gas. And, you know, that's the one thing that if I had money, I'd want to cover. But not having money is actually an advantage for us because no one can tell us what to do. We can help anyone we want. So that's actually a significant factor in our business model is we're not funded. And so we're very agile in who we can help. If you are funded, of course, your funders will tell you who you're supposed to help. Even the IRS, right? If you have IRS exemption, they can audit how you're spending your money and tell you, oh, you didn't do it right. And so I think having money can be a restriction. I mean, I'm not— a lot of nonprofits use their money well, but for us, we're fortunate we don't need money.
Did it help that you were a lawyer in this process? Does it help to be a lawyer in taking this particular road less traveled?
It is helpful if you're a certain kind of lawyer. There was another group that started up near our time, similar idea, but they were really bogged down in liabilities. And so they took a long time to launch. I think they were worried about getting sued. They were worried about, you know, the volunteers getting sick, the clients maybe having a problem. Of course, we were worried about that too. But because we were entrepreneurial minded, we just launched anyway. And that's the spirit you have to bring, not recklessly, because eventually we added those precautions. We added the volunteer pledge where they agree to be safe. We filtered them as far as their symptoms, CDC, following the CDC guidelines. So, but the law did help because you need to assess the risk. I think if you do something and you're just not aware of the risk, then that's just reckless. You know, you're just, you know, shooting from the hip. But as a lawyer, you know, that was something that we had to manage the risk. And I always tell people, I know this sounds a little odd, but if I think that liability is not the worst thing that could happen to you in life. I think it's worse if you don't help anybody. And so sometimes in life, you have to take calculated risks that do involve some personal risks, like getting sick, for example, right? If you do the deliveries, you have a greater chance of getting sick. And so I think as lawyers, you know, we can also take that mindset that there are times where we have to take more personal risks in situations. But it does help to be a lawyer because I did our own incorporation and I did a lot of drafting of, you know, like our volunteer pledge agreement. You know, so there are certain tasks that come in handy. And I think there's 3 lawyers on our leadership team. As lawyers, I think we bring that credibility that, you know, we should know what we're doing. It
helps you take the road less traveled is what I'm hearing. And I like to hammer on that theme, as you can tell. You know, I understand that personally you are also thinking of taking another road less traveled. What is that about?
Well, you know, this whole entrepreneurship thing, everything's connected. So I started thinking, well, why are people trying to make a difference in society, you know, including myself? Where does that come from? Because if there was no spirituality in the world, if you just lived on this earth and you died and then you just went away, poof, then you could be hedonistic. You don't need to take care of other people because it doesn't matter, right? But there's something in your spirit that tells you this is the right thing to do. And so as part of that pursuit for me of truth is I'm studying theology right now. I'm in a Doctor of Minister program at Pacific School of Religion. And not because I'm planning to become a minister, but because I'm trying to seek the truth. And I've been going to church for decades, but frankly, I just would sit in the pews and listen, and I have no idea what it is they're saying. And so I just decided, you know, before my time's up, I better put a little effort into it. And I tell you, on our deliveries and our service, you can see God's presence everywhere. Actually, you can feel it. And just the comments people make to us. One client said that she prayed and God said help would be on the way. And then we showed up. And then she showed up to her house to make a delivery. And she said, my gosh, I feel like you were sent by God. And whether you believe that or not, it gives you chicken skin when those things happen. And it makes you pause. And
Right.
Why are we here?
In the minute we have left on our program, I'd like to ask you, what advice would you give young lawyers about taking the road less traveled in life and law?
Okay, well, I teach a law class at UH on entrepreneurship and business, and we talk about this a lot. So, number one, learn a trade. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like a big impact idea, but you got to become a good lawyer first if you want to practice law. You don't have to practice law. Then number two, think ahead, and how are you going to use your skills to help the world, to help humanity? If we're going to use it just to generate income for yourself, that's fine. You got to take care of your family. But if you can do more than that, then I think you can get a head start on having a meaningful life. I didn't realize that until I had gone through everything and made partner in a law firm, and I suddenly realized, is that it? I had been pre-programmed to that point. So fortunately, I lived long enough so I could redirect my energies. But for young people, the sooner they can realize why they're here, and I think a lot of them do, this generation is looking for meaning in life, which gets back to my first point is, okay, that's fine and good, but you have to learn to practice law first. And so don't be so idealistic that you don't do that step, because no matter how idealistic you are, you're not going to make an impact if you don't know what you're doing, at least if you stay a lawyer.
Well, that sounds like good advice for young lawyers who are on the road and they're looking for ways to go. And Greg, I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. I will look forward to hearing about the other roads that you've traveled or continuing to travel. So aloha to you and best wishes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. See you later.